Amen. This past week, I met with a delightful couple whose wedding I'm going to be officiating in a couple months. Just a really fun, sweet young couple. And their story is great. They fell in love right away upon meeting each other, like right now upon meeting, one of those stories, and were inseparable. But then things got to the point where they were getting serious. You all know how that goes. You start getting serious, and then you start asking the serious questions, right? It happens so often in relationships like this. So the bride, the woman, she was very clear. Marriage, babies, family, house, the works, right? But the guy was kind of a hippie, and he'd had a lifestyle of wandering and having adventures and traveling and moving here and moving there. And when it started getting serious and he saw what the stakes were, he freaked out a bit and kind of ran away. Said, I'm not ready, I can't do this. And he went off on a journey, and he wound up in Belize, where he had some friends who had a farm, and he was working on the farm. Meanwhile, the woman was trying to move on. She was brokenhearted, very sad, but she loved her man very much enough to let him go with grace and love and care. Anyway, he's out in the field at this farm where he's working in Belize, and he's weeding the field. And he gets to a really tough weed, and he yanks on it, and it goes pop as he pulls it out. Pop. And that pop somehow did something to him, right? He had a moment, kind of an awakening. The sound awakened him. And he realized, my girlfriend wants everything I want. Why am I here when I should be with her? I am ready. I do want what she wants, and I want it now. And so he immediately called her and said, if I came back, could we be together? And she says, well, I don't know, but you can try. That was a good play. Anyway, and so he came back, and they got together, and now they're getting married. So it's a happy story. But it took him some time in solitude to get his head together, yes? He had to be by himself out there in a field far away, yanking on a weed to pull it out, pulling out a weed by its roots, in order to get awakened to the fact that what he needed were some roots, right? He needed to put down roots and settle and get married and have a family and be connected in that way. It was his time had come to sink down the roots in the world through his relationship with his girlfriend. Happy story, sweet story. And a reminder of the fruits that can come from times of solitude, whether they're intentionally arranged or not. Yes? There are a lot of folks in California and other parts of this country and in the world that are doing time in jail, right, in prisons. Doing time. I spent in my career a bunch of years working with homeless folks, as you know, and in that role, many of them had spent time in prison or in the county jail. I made regular visits to the county jail, actually, and had extremely rich discussions there. Conversations that I never would have had at our homeless drop-in center. But the fact is that it's at least some folks, when they go to the penitentiary, they actually do some penance. They actually reflect on their lives. I'll never forget one visit I made. I visited 3 folks that I knew from the streets in Palo Alto. I visited them all at the Milpitas County Jail. All three of them had been arrested and put in jail for crimes that they committed when they were stoned. And the reason they committed the crimes when they were stoned was so that they could get money to go get stoned, right? But the reason they got caught is because they were stoned, yes? One guy, shoplifted something earlier and then came back to return it for cash. And the clerk was like, that's stolen? No, it's not stolen. No, it's not. He was stoned. Anyway, he's arguing with the clerk who's already, pushed the button and security's on the way, and there he is in jail. He says, I think, Jim, I have a problem. Maybe I've got a problem. Awakenings happen sometimes, not always in jail. Sometimes that's good. But, at least some of the folks out there in the jails and the prisons, they get time of solitude, some of them. Some put into solitary, which is a pretty grim punishment, of course. I think cruel and unusual, actually. So it wasn't their idea to get solitude, but they got it, right? Then the question is, what are you going to do with that solitude? What are you going to do? Are you going to just do time, or are you going to do life, right? And for many of the prisoners, people I knew who'd been in jails or prisons, a bunch of them actually got to a point where they realized they didn't want to do time anymore, just pass the time until the sentence was over and they were cut loose. They realized they wanted to do life while they were in jail, right? Actually live and make something of this experience in this period of their lives. Do something with it, yes? So that happens for us. Sometimes we find ourselves alone, and we didn't want to be alone. That wasn't our plan. And we experience loneliness, and that's a real problem, right? That is a problem. And it's something we all together have to work on to enable people to break that cycle of loneliness, draw people out, reach out to people who are lonely and struggling, because human contact is so important, right? Talked last week about friendship and how powerful that is, a positive force for us. So we have to do our best for ourselves and each other to cut the pain that can come from being alone. On the other hand, it is a situation and a state of being that one can employ for a purpose, yes? You can take your alone time, whether it was your idea to have it or not, take that alone time and make something of it. Instead of doing time while you're alone, so to speak, you can do life while you're alone. You can be more fully alive and engaged and awakened, and take time alone from other people to be in deep friendship and communion with the divine. St. Gregory of Nyssa, one of the early Christian mystics, a bishop, a remarkable person, he said that the one thing worthwhile in this life is to be a friend of God. This is in the 4th century, he said that. It's a beautiful line, isn't it? That that's what it's all about for us, is to be friends of God. Wow. Okay, now how do you do that, right? How do you forge that friendship and maintain that friendship and make it real? That is what spiritual practice is all about. Contemplative practice is all about that. And it's the difference. That is the difference between being in solitary confinement or being in a state of loneliness and being in the state of solitude, a solitude that makes room for this relationship with ultimate reality, with the universe, with nature, with God, whatever term you want to use. Yes? And think of it, when have you been in solitude, alone, away from other people, but felt like you we're in deep relationship with God, the universe, etc. When have you been all alone from other people and yet did not feel lonely at all? Yeah? Think of times like that. Those are times to cherish, and those are times to make use of, spiritual use of in our lives. The early nuns and monks of the church, the early monastics, first few centuries of Christianity, sought out solitude in order to be in deeper relationship with God and with other people, ironically. So they sought out solitude, but it was seeking out solitude as a positive experience, as a virtue, as opposed to rejecting people, right? You're not turning away from people. You're turning toward the kind of relationship that really can flourish and develop when you have alone time with God, nature, the universe, whatever word you want to use. I think I've quoted here before a few times from the Wisdom of the Desert Fathers. It's a collection of sayings of these early monks and nuns, some of which are just downright hilarious and wild. You know, you think, funny stuff from these guys all those years ago in those conditions? But they are. They're charming. They're honest is what they are. Because there's nothing like a period of solitude where you really drill deep into what's going on inside of yourself to get honest with yourself, yes? And hopefully develop a sense of humor about yourself, too, along the way. Well, these folks certainly did that. There's one monk, he was living in a monastery, actually, in Egypt, or probably. And he had a reputation in the monastery for being angry a lot. He was a difficult guy and would just, explode at people. And he just decided, well, this isn't, I've got a problem here. I think I probably should just go out and do my monastic practice by myself and just go out to the boonies, out to the desert, live in a cell or a hut by myself. And so that's what he did. He went out, lived in the cell, but every day, of course, he had to go out and get water, and he had a water jug. So he'd take his jug and go fill it up and bring it back. Well, this one day, he fills up the jug, he brings it back, he sets it down, and it falls over and pours out. And he was furious. All that work to go get the, getting water was a chore. It was a hassle back in those days, yeah? So he had to go back to the well with the pot, fill it up again, drag it up the mountain, wherever, out in the desert, bring it back. Sets it down, it falls over again, pours out. He's furious. Third time he goes to fill it up, brings it back, sets it down, it tips over again, pours out. This time he's so furious, he takes the pot and he just smashes it on the ground. Furious. And then he's all by himself, right? With himself. And he has a moment, kind of like my young friend who had a moment in Belize. This guy had a moment, he goes, oh. In so many words, he realized, wherever I go, there I am. Wherever you go, you take all your stuff with you, right? Your emotional baggage, the stuff in your head that spins around and controls you, whether you like, even if you don't know about it. Your unconscious dimension is with you. Your bad attitude is with you as you go out by yourself. There you are with all that. And it was up in his face. And he realized, oh, I have to deal with this, and it kind of doesn't matter where I deal with this, I just have to deal with this. And so he realized the line from the passage in the story is, he says, since I have been overcome, even after withdrawing into solitude, I will go back to the monastery, for everywhere there is warfare, endurance, and the help of God. same old, wherever you go. But sometimes we need to go out into solitude to see that, right? To wake up to this stuff and begin to actually deal with it. So solitude doesn't fix our problems, but it does very often concentrate our minds, yes? Concentrate our souls on the stuff that we need to work on. So we can put our times of being alone to work for our souls, and if we do that work, we will be better able to serve other people. If we are better friends with God, who is the one who is doing the observing and the watching when we reflect upon ourselves in solitude, if we can be friends of God, good friends, accepting, awakened, aware, present, listening friends with each other, if we can be friends of God, we can be better friends for each other. So that when we are back with people, when we are back in relationships with other human beings, we can be more loving, more patient, more kind, better listeners, more present. So let us take our times of aloneness and make that move from being lonely to being actually in a deep friendship with the one who is within us. Amen.